Although a formal BDSM contract is not mandatory for a functional dynamic or enjoyable and safe play, such agreements offer an easy reference that allows both dominant and submissive to efficiently organize limits and experiences, navigate submissive training, and reinforce the power exchange dynamic. That's why over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to walk you through the main sections I recommend for building an amazing BDSM contract. If you're new to this channel, hello and welcome. I'm Miss LX and I'm so glad you're here because not only am I going to help you draft your own amazing contract over the next 2 weeks, I have an awesome new resource just for you, my custom BDSM contract template. This 10-page sample contract includes all 11 sections we will discuss over the next 2 weeks with multiple areas you and your partner can fill in with your own information to draft your first or new contract. Just go over to patreon.com/lxerotica to get instant access. Alright, so before I walk you through the main sections of a BDSM contract and how to format it for your dynamic, we should discuss the what and the why. What exactly is a BDSM contract and why would you want one? Well, first off, a contract is not mandatory, as I said at the start. Many, and I would say the majority of kinky couples, however, prefer a contract for reasons we're about to discuss. But you don't need a contract to have a functional dynamic or safe and enjoyable play. Like I frequently say, BDSM is not a closet to come out of, but a buffet to choose from. Let the kinky buffet serve your unique desires and needs as individuals and a couple. Additionally, it's important to note that a BDSM contract is not legally binding. Although it might sound formal, a contract is really just the clear, written agreement that both reflects the findings from prior negotiation and honors mutual consent. And that brings us to our next question. Why would you want a contract for your relationship? Well, for a few reasons. One, clear communication. Before you draft a contract, you and your partner should have already discussed your desires and needs for your dynamic and play, but also negotiated all of the limits and boundaries required for safe and consensual play. Your contract, therefore, clearly communicates what was agreed upon in the negotiation phase. Secondly, a contract emphasizes consent. Think of it like throwing clothes on the floor versus folding them neatly when you undress. A random pile of clothes on the floor doesn't necessarily denote desire or consent, but taking the time to neatly fold the clothes as you remove them is evidence of mindful consent. A contract essentially sends the same message, that mindful consent exists in everything discussed. A contract also serves as an easy reference for your dynamic should any questions arise or new strategies be required. For the dominant specifically, a contract organizes limits, experiences, and points of submissive training, which keeps the dominant's mind clear and their leadership efficient. And finally, a contract reinforces the power exchange dynamic. Many couples find the formality of a contract to be incredibly intimate and a beautiful statement of their commitment to one another. So now that we understand what a BDSM contract is and why it can be so beneficial, let's talk about the main sections that I recommend including in your contract. Now, the following format is not just what I advise my coaching and mentor clients to consider, but this is how I personally draft my contracts for submissives, starting with participants. You want to start here simply for clarity reasons by listing the dominant and submissive's names, honorifics, pet names, and lifestyle roles or DS personalities. And it's also important in this section that each partner delineate what honorifics or pet names they feel appropriate for private and public use, as limits and boundaries will likely change based on the context and setting. The next section to include in your contract is expectations. Now, as harmful or disappointing as unrealistic expectations can be, A lack of clarity or unspoken expectations can be equally destructive. That's why we use this section to describe goals not only for the dominant and submissive personally, but for their dynamic as a whole, as well as their in-scene play. And when it comes to goal setting, I highly recommend you be smart about it, meaning specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. In other words, ask yourselves the following questions as you evaluate your goals for yourself, your submissive, and your dynamic. What do I specifically want to accomplish? How will I measure my progress on the way to my goal? Is my goal actually attainable for me? In other words, am I being realistic? Is this goal relevant to what I want in my dynamic, relationship, or play? By what date should this goal be accomplished, and what are the baby steps needed to get there? There was a study conducted years ago that took two groups of children around the age of 5 to two identical playgrounds filled with beautiful new equipment and jungle gyms for the children. The only difference was a fence. At the first playground, there was no fence, and the researchers watched as the children remained very close to their teacher and didn't really stray from the middle of the playground. At the second playground, there was a fence, and the researchers noticed a stark difference in the behavior of the children. This time, the children ran around and explored every corner of the playground, even going right up to the fence and sticking their little hands and fingers through the gaps. This is the power boundaries give us to explore and to feel confident doing so, especially in kink. And that's why our third section of the contract essentially serves as our fence line, where we can organize each partner's hard and soft limits, boundaries, curiosities, and kinks so we know exactly the scope of consent and feel free to play and explore within those boundaries. Clarity is crucial when it comes to consent. That's why I define authentic consent as a completely mindful, willing, and uncoerced choice to say yes, and the ability to revoke that yes at any time without fear of repercussions. Part of the mindfulness required for consent can be found in the next section of our contract, where we list each partner's slow word, safe word, and stop sign. And this data is important, but we can't stop there. That's why I think it's also important to include context in this section. How does each partner define a slow word, safe word, and stop sign? Does one partner define the use of a safe word as a complete stop to all play in a scene? Or do they consider a safe word being called as just a momentary break from character to make adjustments and go right back into play? How is this different from a slow word? And most importantly, in what context can they be used? All of these are very important questions to seek mutual understanding on, because you can prevent a great deal of unnecessary confusion in your play and foster an environment of confidence and safety as you explore. And the last section we're covering today is especially important for online or distance dynamics. Confidentiality. The assurance of privacy is paramount in providing a sense of mental, emotional, physical, and sexual safety. Knowing that your autonomy will be honored and that any photos, videos, or other information will be protected is key to full expression. So use this section to clarify not only what type of information can be shared about each partner, your dynamic, and your play, but with whom and for what reasons. As a dominant, do you expect to share playtime photos and your submissive's bruised booty on FetLife? That needs to be negotiated and consented to. And that's why this section exists, to get all partners on the same page in agreement on privacy limits surrounding nudity, play, other partners, and social media platforms. So those are the first 5 sections you want to include in your BDSM contract, but be sure you're subscribed and have those notifications turned on so you won't miss next week's video where I walk you through 6 more sections to complete your contract. And again, to get instant access to my 10-page custom BDSM contract template, which includes multiple areas you can fill in with your own information to draft an amazing contract of your own, just go over to patreon.com/LXerotica, and I will see you next week for part 2 of this series.